The clang of the camp gates echoed like a final sentence. For Hanako Sato, 24 years old and weary from years of war, the sound marked the moment she stopped being a daughter of Japan and became a prisoner of America. She had been captured in the Philippines after weeks of chaos, her units scattered, her supplies gone. She expected brutality, humiliation, perhaps even execution. That was what her superiors had drilled into her mind. Americans were monsters cloaked in uniforms. Yet, when the truck carrying her and dozens of other women rolled into the compound in Texas, the scene struck her silent. The camp was not a dungeon. It was orderly, clean, with barracks lined in neat rows. Guards watched closely, but not cruelly. And in the distance, she saw something she had not witnessed in years: a garden, blooming with vegetables tended by soldiers who whistled as they worked. Her heart thudded with confusion. Was this the enemy? Inside the barracks, the women received soap, clean bedding, and bowls of stew so thick with meat it made Hanako's hands tremble. She whispered to the woman beside her, "They are trying to trick us." Yet, as days turned to weeks, the trick never ended. Food arrived with regularity, medical checks were performed, and the guards treated them with a detached professionalism that confounded everything she believed. It was during roll call one morning that she first noticed him: Corporal James Miller. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his uniform crisp despite the Texas dust. He called names with calm authority, his English words punctuated by the interpreter's translations. Unlike some guards who looked through the women as if they were shadows, Miller's eyes lingered, not with desire, but with awareness. When Hanako coughed from lingering bronchitis, his gaze flicked toward her, and the next day a small paper packet of lozenges appeared on her bunk. She knew it must have been him. No one else would have bothered. At first, she dismissed it as coincidence, but soon the signs multiplied. When the camp doctor was overwhelmed, Miller guided Hanako and 2 others to the infirmary, ensuring they received treatment before their cough worsened. When guards distributed mail from prisoners' families, Miller always spoke softly, even when the women could not understand his words. His voice carried a warmth that pierced her defenses. One evening, as she carried laundry to the line, she saw him again. The sun hung low, painting the sky in fire and gold. Miller leaned against the fence, speaking with another soldier. When his eyes caught hers, he paused mid-sentence. For a fleeting heartbeat, the chaos of war, the hatred of nations, the weight of captivity, all of it dissolved. Hanako looked away instantly, her cheeks burning. She told herself it meant nothing. But that night, when sleep eluded her, she saw his eyes again, calm, steady, human. The weeks passed. Routine settled in. Morning roll call, work details, meals, curfews. Yet the rhythm of her days began to pulse around brief glimpses of Miller. She pretended not to notice, but her body betrayed her. A quickening of her breath, a tightening in her chest whenever his boots crunched the gravel near her barracks. She hated herself for it. Had she not sworn loyalty to the Emperor? Had she not been taught that Americans were the enemy? Yet, here she was, clutching memories of an enemy soldier's kindness as if they were treasures. The turning point came one afternoon in late autumn. The women were tasked with gathering vegetables from the camp garden. Hanako bent to pull a basket of carrots when her foot slipped in the soft soil. She stumbled, dropping the basket, and cursed under her breath. A shadow fell across her. She looked up, and there he was, Miller. Without hesitation, he stooped, gathering the scattered carrots. He said something in English, his tone gentle, almost teasing. She didn't understand the words, but his smile made the meaning clear. No harm done. For the first time, Hanako allowed herself to smile back, small and tentative. It was reckless, dangerous. But in that brief exchange, something shifted. That night, she lay awake, staring at the wooden beams above her bunk. She replayed the moment in her mind, his hands brushing dirt from the carrots, the kindness in his eyes, the absurdity of smiling at one another across a war. She pressed her hands to her face, ashamed, terrified, but unable to banish the warmth that had bloomed inside her. Days blurred into weeks. Opportunities to speak were scarce. But glances became conversations of their own. A nod at roll call. A quick glance as she carried trays in the mess hall. Once she dared to whisper thank you in broken English when another small packet of medicine appeared on her bunk. He had walked past, expression neutral, but the faintest twitch of a smile touched his lips. The risk grew heavier with every passing day. Other prisoners whispered, some disapproved, muttering that she was dishonoring Japan. Others said nothing but watched with wary eyes. Hanako tried to bury the feelings, but they sprouted like weeds in every quiet moment. She told herself it was madness, that this could never be. And yet, when Miller passed by, her heart betrayed her. The camp was surrounded by wire and watchtowers, but inside those fences a different kind of war was waging. The war between what she had been taught and what she now felt. Hanako Sato, prisoner of war, sworn enemy of America, was falling in love with her guard. And for the first time since the war began, she felt truly afraid. The Texas nights were vast and endless, the stars scattered across the sky like fragments of shattered glass. For Hanako Sato, those nights became both comfort and torment. The barracks grew quiet after lights out, but her thoughts refused to rest. She lay awake, clutching the thin blanket, haunted not by bombs or hunger as she once had been, but by the memory of a man's steady eyes and quiet gestures. Corporal James Miller was everywhere and nowhere. His presence lingered in the dust kicked up by his boots, in the low murmur of his voice when calling names at roll, in the way his shadow cut across the ground at dusk. He was not just a guard anymore. He had become the rhythm of her captivity, the hidden current beneath her every day. And yet nothing had been spoken aloud. They were prisoner and guard, enemies bound by war. To cross that line was unthinkable, forbidden, dangerous, but feelings cared nothing for rules. The chance came on an ordinary afternoon. The women had been assigned to mend uniforms in the sewing hut. Hanako sat with the needle and thread, her fingers stiff from cold when the door creaked open. She glanced up and froze. Miller entered with a bundle of uniforms. His stride was casual, his eyes flicked toward her with unmistakable intent. He set the uniforms down, gave a short instruction to the interpreter, and turned to leave. But as he passed Hanako's table, something small slipped from his hand. A folded scrap of paper landed silently on the bench beside her. Her breath caught. She dared not look at it immediately. She stitched 3 more lines of thread, her hands trembling before sliding her palm across the paper and tucking it beneath the cloth in her lap. That night, beneath her blanket, she unfolded it with shaking fingers. Scrawled in rough pencil were 3 words written in English: "Do you read?" Her heart hammered. He was testing her, reaching across the chasm. She bit her lip, whispering the words to herself, tasting their foreign shape. Yes, she could read a little English. Fragments she had learned in school before the war forbade such things, enough to understand. She lay awake, staring at the paper, wondering how she could answer. The next day, opportunity came disguised as accident. While carrying buckets of water, Hanako dropped one near the fence where Miller stood on duty. As she bent to gather the handle, she slipped a folded scrap of her own beneath a stone at the fence post. Her note contained just 1 word, shaky but clear. Yes. That night fear gnawed at her. What if another guard found it? What if Miller denied everything and she was punished for treachery? Yet, when she passed the same spot the following day, the stone was bare. Her note was gone. Days later, another scrap appeared. This time the words were slightly longer, careful, patient. "I bring book." And true to his word, a week later, an old battered English primer appeared on her bunk, hidden beneath folded linens. She opened it with trembling hands. Inside the margins were tiny pencil notes, translations into German, short sentences, fragments of thought. For weeks, the book became their secret bridge. Miller would collect it under the guise of routine inspections, then return it with new notes scribbled in the margins. Hanako devoured every word, every translation, every shaky sentence he left for her to practice. One evening, she wrote back in the margins, "Your sky is big. My home, sky, was small." When the book returned, his reply was penciled beside her words. Same sky, different home. She traced the letters with her fingertip until they blurred, but secrecy was a fragile shield. The camp buzzed with rumors. Other women noticed the scraps of paper, the way Miller's eyes lingered. Some muttered warnings, others looked away. To be seen as collaborating with the enemy was dangerous. Even kindness could breed suspicion. Hanako tried to bury her growing attachment, but the human heart resists commands. Each note, each quiet gesture, drew her deeper into something she could not name aloud. The danger grew sharper one afternoon when another guard, Private Harris, a man known for his sharp tongue, cornered Miller near the gate. Hanako happened to be sweeping the yard nearby. She caught fragments of their words, though most slipped past her limited English. Still, she recognized her own name. Harris sneered, gesturing toward the women, then toward Miller. His voice dripped with accusation. Miller's jaw tightened. He said something short, curt, final. Harris spat into the dust and stalked away. Hanako's blood ran cold. He was being watched. She was being watched. That night, she lay awake, clutching the English book to her chest. She whispered in Japanese, "This is madness." But her heart whispered back, "This is life." Winter deepened, and with it came small mercies. On Christmas Eve, the camp organized a gathering. A show of goodwill for prisoners meant also to remind them of American strength. Tables were lined with simple decorations. Carols played on a gramophone, and each prisoner received a small parcel, fruit, chocolate, even tiny bottles of perfume. Hanako sat among the women, the sweet, unfamiliar taste of chocolate melting on her tongue, when she felt a shadow fall across her. She looked up. Miller stood nearby, speaking casually with another guard. But as he turned to leave, his hand brushed the edge of the table, leaving behind another folded scrap. Her pulse raced. Then he appeared. Miller walked slowly, scanning the perimeter like any dutiful guard. When he drew near, he stopped, his gaze fixed not on her, but on the horizon. His voice, low and steady, barely carried in the winter air. "You can read now," he said softly. Hanako froze. Her mind whirled. Should she reply? She forced out the words in halting English, "A little." "You teach." His lips twitched into the ghost of a smile. "You learn fast." She swallowed hard, her breath misting in the air. The distance between them was small, yet it felt like crossing an ocean. For the first time, their worlds touched not through paper scraps, but through sound. A shout from the far side of the yard shattered the moment another guard called Miller's name. He straightened instantly, gave a short nod to Hanako, barely a flicker of acknowledgement, and strode away. Hanako stood trembling, her fingers pressed to her lips as if to hold the moment inside. From then on, their silent bond became a fragile thread woven through her days. Glances held a fraction longer, words exchanged in fragments, careful and quiet. Each moment was stolen, precious, dangerous. And yet, with each risk, the bond deepened. One night, as she studied the English book beneath her blanket, she found a new sentence scribbled in his rough handwriting. Not enemy, not you. Her chest ached with the weight of it. For the first time, she allowed herself to whisper his name into the darkness. James. The war outside dragged on. News seeped into the camp in fragments. Battles in Europe, bombings in Japan, whispers of defeat. For the women, captivity had become its own strange world, a place of contradictions where survival meant confronting truths they had never imagined. For Hanako, survival now meant something more. It meant protecting a secret that could destroy them both. And yet, she wondered in the quiet hours if the war ever ended. What then? Could a Japanese woman and an American soldier ever meet outside the fences not as prisoner and guard, but as something else? The thought both terrified and sustained her because by now there was no denying it. Hanako Sato, daughter of Japan, prisoner of America, was in love with Corporal James Miller. Spring crept slowly across Texas, painting the once frosted fields with wildflowers. To most in the camp, the change brought relief, warmer nights, softer winds, and longer days. But for Hanako Sato, the season meant more than nature's renewal. It marked the deepening of a bond she had never dared imagine possible. Her secret exchanges with Corporal James Miller had grown bolder, though never reckless. He left notes tucked into library books. She responded by penciling in translations. They spoke in clipped whispers when chance allowed, piecing together halting fragments of English and Japanese into something resembling conversation. The risk was constant. Each stolen word carried the weight of discovery, yet neither could pull away. The war had thrown them together as captor and captive, but something older, stronger, the quiet pull of human need, had made them something else. The camp itself reflected the shifting tides of the larger war. By May 1945, rumors buzzed of Germany's surrender. Guards spoke with relief. Prisoners whispered with dread. If Europe had fallen, what did that mean for Japan? Would the Pacific War drag on until their homeland was nothing but ash? Hanako listened to the murmurs with a hollow ache. Her family's letters had stopped months earlier. Tokyo had been bombed, they said, entire neighborhoods gone. Was her mother alive? Her younger brother? Every day, without word, was another wound. It was during this time of despair that Miller's quiet presence became her anchor. One evening, as she passed him at the edge of the yard, his voice drifted low. "You strong." 2 simple words. They carried more comfort than any blanket, any ration, any promise of peace. She held them inside like a flame. In June, the bond between them took its boldest form yet. The camp hosted a Sunday service, and a local church group had been invited to sing hymns for the prisoners. The women were seated in rows, guarded carefully. Hanako bowed her head as the music swelled. Strange words, but hauntingly beautiful. When she glanced up, she saw him. Miller stood at the back, his gaze scanning the crowd. For a moment, their eyes met. Not just a passing glance, but a connection deep and unbroken. Her breath caught. Around them, the hymn rose like a tide, but in that instant, the world shrank to just 2 people across a gulf of war and wire. She dared a tiny motion. The barest tilt of her head. His lips moved, forming a silent word she could barely catch. Safe. Her chest tightened, tears pricking her eyes. For the first time she believed it. But safety was fragile. A week later, the illusion cracked. Hanako had been assigned to the camp kitchen. Scrubbing pans, Miller entered briefly to deliver supplies, his presence as ordinary as any other day. But when he left, she noticed Private Harris watching him closely. Harris's eyes narrowed, then flicked toward her. That evening, Miller slipped her a hurried note. "Careful, eyes on us." Her stomach dropped. The danger was real. Harris was suspicious, and suspicion could mean punishment, transfer, even worse. For days, she forced herself to avoid Miller's gaze, to bury her feelings beneath routine. It felt like tearing her heart apart with her own hands. Yet, even distance could not erase what had grown between them. When she caught sight of him across the yard, when she passed the fence where they had once spoken, the ache only deepened. July brought the turning point. The women had been detailed to assist at a nearby farm, helping harvest under guard. It was meant as labor, but for Hanako, it became a miracle. She was working the rows when a sudden summer storm broke. Rain poured, soaking the earth, drenching clothes. The guards herded the women toward a shed, shouting over the downpour. In the chaos, she stumbled, slipping in the mud. Strong hands caught her. She looked up, rain streaming down her face, and saw him. Miller. For a breathless second, he held her upright, their bodies pressed close by necessity. The storm roared around them, thunder cracking like artillery, but his grip was steady. His eyes met hers, and in them she saw not duty, not danger, but something raw, undeniable. They broke apart quickly, the moment gone as fast as it came. Yet its echo lingered, stronger than any note or glance before. August shattered everything. News spread like wildfire. Atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Then, on August 15th, the unthinkable. Japan's surrender. For the prisoners, the announcement was surreal. Some wept in relief, others in grief. Hanako felt both. Her homeland was broken, yet perhaps her family still lived. The war was over. But for her and Miller, the end of war meant the end of their fragile world. Prisoners would be repatriated soon. The fence that had separated them would vanish, but so too would the daily rhythm of their secret bond. The night after the surrender, she found a note tucked into her bunk. "We must talk." Her hands shook as she read it. They met at the garden, their old hiding place. The air was thick with late summer heat, cicadas droning. He stood waiting, his uniform damp with sweat, his face shadowed with something heavier than duty. "You go home," he said softly, his English slow, deliberate. "Soon." Her throat tightened. "Yes." He hesitated, then stepped closer, lowering his voice. "But I don't forget." The words were clumsy, but their meaning was clear. He couldn't say more. He didn't need to. Hanako's heart pounded. The world tilted. She wanted to reach for him, to close the distance, but the risk was too great. Instead, she whispered the only word she could manage. "Promise." His eyes held hers, steady, unyielding. Then he gave the smallest nod. "Promise." September came. Repatriation orders were read. The women would board ships bound for Japan. The camp buzzed with nervous energy. Bags were packed, farewells whispered. On the morning of departure, Hanako stood in line with the others, her bundle clutched tight. Guards checked names, herding them toward trucks. She searched the yard desperately. Where was he? Then she saw him. Miller stood at the edge of the yard, posture rigid, hands behind his back. His face betrayed nothing, but his eyes found hers. As she climbed onto the truck, she slipped her hand into her sleeve. Folded, there was the English primer, worn and battered. She held it for him to see. For the briefest moment, his lips curved. A ghost of a smile. Then the truck lurched forward, carrying her away. The voyage to Japan was long, the seas rough. Hanako clutched the book every night, tracing the notes, the words, the promises. Back in Tokyo, she found rubble where her home once stood. Her mother had died in the fire bombings. Her brother was missing. Only an aunt remained, gaunt and hollow-eyed. Life was survival once more, yet through hunger and ruin, she carried her secret flame. Years passed. Japan rebuilt. Hanako worked as a translator, her English sharpened by those penciled notes. She never forgot the man who had given her not just words, but hope. In 1952, 7 years after the war, she received a letter. The envelope bore an American stamp, the handwriting rough but unmistakable. "Hanako, I keep my promise. James." Her hands trembled as she read. Inside was more, an invitation, a photograph of him in civilian clothes smiling shyly. The world had changed, yet this promise had remained. And as she held the letter to her chest, Hanako knew the war had taken everything from her. Yet, against all odds, it had also given her something no propaganda, no prison, no ruin could ever destroy: love. Thank you for following this powerful story of forbidden love across enemy lines. If this journey moved you, please subscribe to the channel for more untold stories from history. Leave a like if this narrative resonated with you, and share it with others who appreciate remarkable tales of the human heart. Your support helps us continue bringing these stories to light and you in the next episode.